Welcome to Silicon Economics. Silicon Economics is a podcast where we explore the intersection of technology and economics. I'm Rob Soderberry, Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Flash business here at Western Digital. With me is my co-host,
Adarsh Kannan, VP of Economics and Data Science here at Western Digital.
Adarsh and I are excited to bring you this episode. Let's jump in. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Arvind Jain to the show. Arvind, welcome.
Thank you.
Adarsh is also joining me. Adarsh is remote today. It's our first experiment with a remote attendee. Adarsh.
Hi Rob. Hi Arvind.
And today we're going to dive into the story of Glean. So Arvind, maybe start with just tell us a little about this journey. How did you find yourself on this course?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. My journey, I started my career as an engineer almost 30 years back. Studied computer science in college, and then I started my first job at Microsoft. The dot-com boom was happening at that time, so I really wanted to work at startups, learn more how companies are built, and so I did a few startups as an early employee, and then I landed at Google, which is where I spent over a decade of my engineering career. Really good time, learning how modern technologies are built at Google. I had a great experience there, and then in 2014 we started Rubrik, which is a enterprise software company in data security space, and did that for about 5.5 years, and which is when the idea for Glean came to us, because we were facing this problem of not being able to find anything that
a problem
that we're looking for.
Everybody in the world can empathize with.
Yeah, and so we got really excited about solving this problem. After having faced this my entire work career, so that's what we did. Started Glean in 2019 with a very simple mission. We were basically trying to build a Google for people in their work life, and that's how the Glean journey started about 6 years back. And since then, the AI technologies that we started out with building our technology, they've evolved so much that our mission has expanded, and now instead of just helping people find things at work, we're able to actually help them a lot more.
It's funny, we're 20 plus years into this notion of enterprise search.
Yeah.
And we're still just now starting to crack that problem. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. Well, search is a very hard problem. If you think about it, in some ways, you're offering magic to your user. You're telling them that, hey, you can actually come and ask any question or be looking for anything. We're going to find the right information. We're going to find the right answer. And now, if you think about the expectations from search, they're even greater, in the sense that people are expecting you to even do work for them, in this this platform. Right. And so first of all, it's a difficult problem, and it requires a lot of R&D investment to actually go and build a good product. You saw this, on the internet, Google became such a big company, and have really dominated the market because they invested a lot in building this product, and nobody else has been really been able to catch up. And so now coming back to the enterprise, why the problem never got solved. So first, thinking about search, you have to sort of get hold of all the company's data and knowledge and information, before you can make it searchable, of course, right? And just even getting to that data was a big problem in the past, because enterprise environments are very complex. There's so many different types of systems, different versions of software, and so you have to sort of figure out how to even go and get hold of all of that data that you want to make searchable. And so companies spend some time building those technologies, and then the second part of what made search really complicated was the fact that you have to understand in an enterprise that has been around for 50 years. There's so much information. Some of that has become obsolete and out of date. Some of that is good. So how do you figure out all those things, right? So there's a lot of technology to build, and I think for a long time, I think it sort of was more not a startup friendly project to build. So much investment, and so much technology that you'll probably run out of money before you solve all of that.
Right, you need some staying power.
Yeah, and I think what has changed now is that both there are a lot of technology changes that have happened over the last few years. So not just AI, but even scalable cloud computing, the advent of SaaS applications, which makes it easy for you to actually connect into your enterprise systems and actually see what knowledge lives in those. And then of course AI, which is really helping you understand all this data and knowledge in the context of an enterprise. So a lot of technologies have come together, which has made this the right time finally to solve that problem that we've always wanted to solve, over the last 3 decades or even more.
Thanks for that insight. One quick question on that front is when we think about enterprise search, it's a little different from what we would traditionally think about web crawling and the textual content there is, right? Like this semi-structured data. Can you speak a little bit to, when Glean got started, how did you overcome some of those connector problems, right? Like where you have either structured data or semi-structured data. And the second part is about people tend to forget 2019 was a time when LLMs were just sort of surfacing. You did have a few early versions. How did that play out in Glean's journey?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah. So first, you're absolutely right. The enterprise data is so different and sort of bespoke in nature. You have tickets, you have emails, you have conversations, you have documents, you have data in your ERP systems, your people records. So this is very different from the internet. On internet, everything is a web page, right? And there's information on that web page. So when you build a system that is able to actually understand your enterprise information, you have to take into account this very diverse set of data. You have to actually build canonical sort of information model to be able to sort of work with all of this data in your search systems. And so we did a lot of work on that, in our journey, at Glean is first and foremost, as I said, the prerequisite for building a great search product is to actually, connect, with all of that enterprise information. So, and enterprises use, hundreds or thousands of different systems out there. So one of the big thing, that we did at Glean was building these deep integrations with the most common enterprise systems that enterprises tend to use, and understand the content, the nature of it, and then build this uniform data model to be able to sort of connect into those systems, represent that data in our system, and then sort of run this overall search and retrieval on that information. One of the key challenges that I would also like to add is that enterprise information is also very private in nature. Unlike on the internet where everybody can see everything, in an enterprise, most information is secured and governed, and only a few people can see it. So you have to build a search technology that's able to understand entitlements and ensure that when somebody comes and looks for information, you give them the relevant information, but only the one that they can actually use. So those are some of the interesting challenges that we had to solve. But then I think the other thing which is very interesting is that, well, part of the reason why we started Glean was because of we saw these language models just coming up in 2018, 2019, which could understand enterprise information at a level that we could never before, even in those days. So the transformers had not made its way to the world like it has now, where everybody knows what these models are, what they do. At that time, only the search teams, at Google specifically, we knew the impact of this technology on search. Initially these models were built to make search better, because they can understand information at a level of semantic understanding that our previous generation of search technology couldn't. So we saw that power of these models, and so we used them. So we actually when we built the first version of Glean in 2019, we were already using these transformer-based language models to deeply understand enterprise information and do search at a conceptual, at a semantic level, not at a trying to match a few keywords in the query with the content. So that was a big unlock. We saw that actually had a tremendous impact on building a search experience in the enterprise that actually people felt good about.
And when you, when I notice when you start using the tool, you go very quickly from a search metaphor, which is find this document for me, find the latest version of this document, find this piece of information. I know I've seen this. I saw this. Like I need to get it back. To then you realize, well, actually, that's not what I want. What I want to know is like, what's the process inside my company to do blank? That's the question I'm trying to answer.
That's right.
And then, in fact, maybe I want to share that with someone else. And then all of a sudden, not only do I want to synthesize that answer, but I want to create a deliverable. And are you seeing customers sort of work their way up that hierarchy of sort of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of information retrieval and presentation?
Absolutely. In fact, ChatGPT, told us that we can do a lot more. Like with AI, it's not just about me trying to find the right information. I actually want to have AI directly answer the question that I have, right? Or create an artifact that I would have to do manually. I want AI to sort of create that artifact and then go and share it with people. So as we see people use Glean inside enterprises, people are coming with all kinds of questions. And in fact, there is that level of curiosity and excitement.
Your product management team must be going nuts.
We also have questions about, hey, what should our company do? Right? That, people now want to actually have AI, answers. So yes, I mean, I think right now, people are in exploration stage. They're trying to actually see what are the limits of, AI technology. And so from a point of view of question answering, that's sort of a very, very incremental sort of journey. If you imagine I have a question, before in search, I would ask the question and I would get the right information that I could then read to get my answers. Well, now you can actually short circuit that. You can say that, hey, just give me the right answer. I don't want to actually go and read those long documents. So Glean allows it. I mean, that's a new paradigm.
You give me that answer at some confidence level that I know it's a good answer.
Exactly. And in the enterprise, you have to be careful. You have to actually, so when we provide answers to questions that people have, we'll actually line by line, we'll actually also tell you why and how we're actually producing that content, why we think that's the right answer. So citing the right sources and the authoritative human generated information within those systems. That's a big part of an experience that you create. You have to actually build trust with people when you actually go further and do more complicated tasks for them. So when you show an answer, you have to show references, citations. When you actually create artifacts, again, you have to sort of explain your process of how you got to that. But people are going, absolutely sort of traversing, that journey, going, from searching for information to finding, precise answers to your questions, to creating content, summarizing information, doing data analysis, and actually take a lot of your higher level tasks and get AI to actually do those tasks for you.
So I want to go to our first economics question. And just a fair warning that Adarsh is our economist, so we'll go to him in a minute. But one of the things that I've been intrigued by is that tools like Glean are this sort of broad-based productivity driver. So I have 4,000 people in my organization. I can recapture 30 minutes or an hour a day out of those 4,000 people. But how do I measure that? How much is it worth to me? How do I figure out, is the ROI, is the TCO there to deploy Glean? How have you seen people sort of wrestle with that equation?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I see different approaches, that, for example, our buyers, executive buyers, take, to that question. And so first, I think there is a lot of appetite today, among the largest enterprises to figure out what AI is and what it's going to do for them. And so there are, enterprises that are not thinking about ROI and economic.
Test the thesis, test the value prop, learn, discover.
Yeah. So they're not yet at what's the economic value. And they want to sort of, figure this out more, right? And not only figuring out, some enterprises have also made the decision that, look, this is a transformative technology and it's important for us. And I want to start, the education, of my workforce, start today. Like, I don't want to wait.
Right.
I don't know what the value I'm going to get in the next 1 year, 2 years. But what I know is that, we're going to go through an AI transformation journey, and to transform our company, we need to transform our people first. So I want to actually bring, some AI tools, to our employees, get them familiar with it, because you have to remember that this technology is and this, if you think about AI and the machine, this is a machine that you've never seen before.
Right.
It doesn't work like a machine in many ways. It's unpredictable. You ask the same question to it 4 times, it's going to actually, answer it in 4 different ways. So in many ways, it sort of feels like a human. And so, people have to get used to, these kind of, paradigms, where they're working with sort of probabilistic and, more human-like sort of systems, as opposed to, deterministic, and predictable machines. So that's sort of one set of, companies, that are thinking of this as, this is basic education that I need to drive, and we'll see what happens. Then there are others, where they're saying that, look, if we're going to make an investment, we need to see some value. And so a lot of our customers are, they look at, what's the impact of it? And it's sort of what you mentioned, hey, does this tool save, 30 minutes of time for each one of my employees, right? And there are easy ways to sort of, figure that out. Typically, companies will run surveys, with their employee base, and ask, what's the impact of this tool? How much time does it save them? And what we've seen consistently, with Glean, for example, our customers, they do these surveys themselves, and they come back and tell us that, hey, your tool is saving our employees about 3 hours of time, per week. It's very consistent, actually. I'm surprised, why it is so consistent across the different companies. But that's the number that we're seeing. We have also commissioned an independent study.
It's because probably the average employee spends 4 or 5 hours looking for stuff every week. So
right. And then,
the math is pretty straightforward.
Exactly, yeah. I think the potential for AI is actually much greater, by the way. In the future, I feel in the near future, 50% of our work will be at least, be something that, AI will do for us. That day is not very far. But so that's the second model, where you look at time savings. Then you can look at your sort of, employee cost per hour, and you can come up with an ROI metric based on it. But it's very soft. It's very soft because what did you do with that time, right? And so then you get more specific. So our third set of enterprises are, they need even more harder proof, for all the AI investment that they're making. So once you go into use cases, function by function, I think about customer service as an example. If your customer service team deploys AI inside inside their sort of systems, and now your customer service agents, when they open a new ticket that a customer has opened, if AI has already resolved that case for you, or at least give you the background, and you can resolve, then you can handle this much faster, that actually translates into real ROI, right? So we've seen Glean at one of the largest telcos in the world. We've seen that their case resolution time actually has improved by 42%, which is a big number, and that translates to $50 to $100 million in annual savings for them. So as you get to specific use cases, then businesses already have hard ROI hard metrics,
and the ability to measure it, right?
And ability to measure, yeah. So that's we're seeing the full spectrum. Right. But I would for me, when I think about the economic value of AI, I actually think that we are right now more in that we need to have our mindset be more around the first one, which is that this is such a transformative technology. First, there's no question. As an example, if I ask you what's the ROI of your email system, you won't have an answer for it, right? But you need it, right? It's a basic need that that's what as an organization you can't run without email.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah, and it's sort of it's the same thing applies to AI. It's that fundamental. You have to invest, you should not even think about ROI. Like you have to sort of have the the mindset of bringing these technologies to your people and train them. And also the second thing that I would add is that there needs to be more focus right now on top line and not bottom line. Like in the sense that this is not about efficiency. This is not about like getting you 10% or 20% faster. This is about also fundamentally changing what you can do as a company.
Right.
And like what new products you could build, like how you can operate in a way which allows people to be a lot more creative, right? So there's I think like I feel that the bigger impact of AI is going to come on that front, not on like the efficiency front.
Yeah, so I love the 1, 2, 3 framing, right? Like you're kind of talking about those soft impact going all the way up to like hard data that you can show. Some of the evaluation of co-pilots in other circumstances, like particularly around developer productivity, you could actually show hard data simply by a control experiment, right? Like I was part of one of those studies where like boilerplate code, all of us kind of have to write that, and as long as AI can do it for you, you save time really. The transformative effects generally tend to show up much later in the economy, right? Like even if you kind of think about computing system adoption, there isn't a spike that we see in productivity gains. It's more of a steady gain over time. I think PwC, if I'm correct, recently had a survey or a study where they sort of tried to quantify the economic impact of AI. And they kind of concur a little bit with what you're saying, right? Like their viewpoint is 3, which is the bucket of having productivity gains happen, be the first part in which the economy would see a boost due to AI. And they say, hey, that's an investment thesis we got to do. And then that gradually leads into more and more percolation. And we see this in tech diffusion with almost all technologies. There is a very famous economist by the name Diego Comín, who's studied tech diffusion across different landscapes. And one of the things that people find is that when new technology comes, there is extensive margin, which is just getting adopted. And then there is intensive margin, where it's becoming a part and parcel of our daily lives. More often than not, the extensive margin happens really fast. The intensive margin happens very slowly, right? Like email system, when it came, maybe the first few people in the company used it. Now probably it's like ubiquitous. And I feel like that transition path requires you to adopt the technology no matter what before you figure out all the use cases, which sits well with your 1, 2, 3 framing essentially. Yeah. I also wanted to touch upon one question there, which is, I think when you started talking about this, the economic productivity of AI, I also want to ask this question in a development manner. It seemed like what I heard from you is in 2019, just having the ability to have the LLMs changed the way the search was fundamentally built, right? Like you could get named entity recognition, for example, a lot easier. You could bring disparate sources of data together. So there's something that it helped enable the development in Glean's own story. Can you uncover that a little bit more? Like from that angle, like what was the productivity gain, or like what was the transformative technology that it played a role in?
Yeah. Look, search has been the largest AI application in the world for the last, 3 decades, with Google search, right? I mean, I think this is and Google search has built, on the core foundation of AI technologies. And there was a previous generation of technologies that we use, like, which is sort of predictive, like, machine learning models. And so, like, if you think about the search technology stack, so there are a lot of, like, core problems that you're trying to solve there. Like you mentioned one, which is named entity recognition. Like if you can understand, like, in a question, like if something is a named entity, then you can actually like do a much better job finding the right, information back. But there are many more. Like for example, you have to build a synonyms system. Like, I can come and ask for a user guide, and there's a document that says it's a product manual, and you got to sort of like, well, these are the same things. You got to actually, like still be able to retrieve that even if it doesn't mention those 2 words. Similarly, you have to sort of detect acronyms. You have to detect, like, in a given question, like what are the terms that really matter and which ones are like, sort of, things that you should not really, even if they're not present in the document, you don't really care. So like in Google, we build systems for, each one of those components, and there are like hundreds of these in a search in any advanced search system, with sort of painstaking rules and processes around, and it took us more than a decade.
Lots of code.
Yeah, lots of code.
Yeah.
And then these models come in 2018 is when they sort of really start to get powerful, and you train a model on all the world's knowledge, and then you sort of fine tune it for the synonym task or the ranking task. And we started to see immediately that they were actually doing better with these models are actually doing a better job at detecting synonyms and or named entities than all the stuff that we built before. So that was that was a true moment for us. So when we started building our core search technology, we've embedded language models in pretty much all parts of our search stack, right? Including ultimately how you rank content, where we are taking users' queries, we're understanding the conceptual meaning behind it, and we're again doing sort of matching of that with your enterprise knowledge in this conceptual embedding space. So it's been it has played a fundamental role in the development of the Glean product from the very beginning. In fact, it was as I said, one of the motivating factors for why we even started. We felt that nobody had built a decent enterprise search product in the past, even though there are great teams, great people, the technology simply wasn't there, and we felt this was sort of the breakaway moment. Yeah.
You've mentioned several times about that retraining of the people. That's another issue I think about. I think about if I was going to use Excel.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward to get to the idea. You can type an equal sign and an equation. You can access the boxes, but I'm using 0.1% now of the power of that tool. How do you are you seeing people think through that problem of really moving the kind of conceptual awareness of their employee population up, and how do you unpack that? How do you attack that problem?
Yeah. Well, so first, on that Excel example, I have myself never learned how to use Excel, all these years. As a developer, you can get away without without learning, how to use Excel. So I'm but it has so much power, and I think the that power is really only when you make it accessible is when you sort of get full value out of your software platform. And so that is one of the things that AI is going to completely change. I don't think it's sort of it's going to take away, we don't have to actually go and as an employee, for example, I don't have to actually learn all those cool capabilities of Excel. I don't have to figure out those menus and how to sort of find that action a sub menu of a sub menu of a menu and figure those things out. So first, fundamentally, the software, how software is actually delivered and designed, I think is going to be fundamentally changing, because I think we're going to have this sort of conversational or AI driven mode of UI interaction where you can just say what you want, right, without having to figure out how to actually do that stuff within that piece of software. And and all software that we will see in the future will have these kind of capabilities. And the thing that I'm most excited about is this this sort of unlock. Today, whenever you want to you have, let's say you have a thought, you want to do some data analysis, questions come up, for example, I'll give you real example that I had. I felt that in our company we're spending too much time meeting each other, too many meetings, and there's not enough time to do actual work. And I want to actually figure out if that's a reality. I have some questions, for example, how many meetings do we have that are internal versus with external people? How many meetings per on average per employee? And we have all these questions, but we have no data warehouse. We're not connected our data with with these,
right.
And so I sort of feel paralyzed, just can't I can't answer those questions. But I think now with AI, all of these things change, because I think you have seamless connectivity into all of your enterprise data, whether it's unstructured or structured, and you can simply command, like you can just ask a question in natural language. I don't have to be a developer, and I can go and ask that question, and AI can automatically like not only fetch the right information, but also actually write code on the fly to perform that analysis that you want and give an answer back to you. So I think we're sort of really looking at this world where the I think, our ability to work with, information and data and knowledge is going to skyrocket. And we don't have to actually change ourselves as humans, to increase that ability.
Bring the tooling to the people.
Yeah, it sort of becomes natural. Like, you can just work the way that, we are good at. Like, you ask questions and, the AI tooling sort of like, give you back all those
And
answers.
This is all this different sides of the same coin here. I mean, those meetings are happening because people need access to information because they can't find the information, so they have to go to the meeting.
Yeah.
And, the ability to solve that at the meta level.
Yeah.
I mean, why I can't ask, which of these meetings are important to me? Here's the things I care about. What happened this week? There's all kinds of interesting things. And you start to solve a meeting problem, and maybe you end up with a bunch of solutions that no longer need meetings.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, I think I would add that the idea of like self-serving yourself, like self-serving to like whatever sort of tasks that you have. A lot of tasks that you are like totally okay doing today, you won't be 5 years from now. And I always give people this example of, think about in the world before Google search. If I asked you what's the GDP of United Kingdom, what was that in 1983? You'd be happy going to a library and spend like a few hours going through newspaper archives, pick the right, date and get the data and come back with an answer to it. And it was okay for us, like totally okay to spend like, 5 hours,
right.
And now like, that you laugh at that, like, a question like that, you're asking Google, you expect an answer to come back in 2 seconds back to you. But I think like when you think about the next, 5 years from now, the example that I gave you, that like today, like, I will be happy, having somebody go and spend time, like, to go and analyze our meeting data, like, put the data in a warehouse, like spend like, like a day or 5 days to sort of get an answer to, get some insights, on those. And it'll sort of, it'll be laughable to us like 5 years from now. In 5 years from now, like it is sort of like, thought to action, where any thought that you have, I make it, real for you.
And it kind of changes the role of an executive. Because in that example, back in the day, I would assign that to a staffer. They'd go do some work. They'd come back later. Maybe they schedule a meeting to report out. Maybe it wouldn't be quite right. And now I think about that trade-off. If this is less than a 20-minute problem, I probably should just do this myself.
Yeah.
And the number of things that can be solved now in less than 20 minutes relative to the past is just really opens up the the influence, the impact as a senior person you can make yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, AI is all about empowerment. Like, it like just enables all of us to do things, that we couldn't ourselves. Like, we needed help, or we had to spend a lot of time ourselves on it.
Now, I'm interested in you as a consumer of AI infrastructure. Super hot topic in the Valley. Don't know how many GPUs or the cloud services you use, but first of all, how do you even approach, what is the back end I need for this? What's the philosophy I want to use on that back end? What are the principles of operation?
So for us, we see our goal at the company is we want to help enterprises make AI, work for them. If you think about all these AI models, they've all been built, on the world's public knowledge and data, and they don't really know anything about your enterprise. So Glean's role is to actually connect your enterprise context, knowledge, data, and information with the power of these AI models. And actually, by combining those two, we want to actually like help transform your business processes, bring, amazing efficiencies, and all of that. Now, the way we've thought about like the operating principle for us, like as a company is, we are here, first of all, like we don't like to compete with anyone. We don't want to actually build technology that others are. So our model, in terms of how we use, we are fully built on modern cloud technologies. We actually very heavily use the foundation models that Google or OpenAI or Anthropic and other companies are building, and our approach is to sort of again solve the problems that they are not, which is how do you actually take all this cool technology and make it work,
Right.
to drive
Last mile.
the last mile, how do you solve that one business process where I'm spending $10 million every year, and I want to actually shrink that down, right? So that's our focus. That's how we've actually built our product and our product roadmap. We're innovating and on these fronts, and we're actually making it possible for an enterprise to actually benefit from all the amazing innovation that are happening at these other AI companies. And it's an important one because if you think about any enterprise, you'll get the most value of AI when you have all that AI technology available to you. One model is not going to solve everything well. We're already seeing this, these different models that I mentioned, they all do some things better than others. And so again, so our role now becomes that how do we sort of take a business process and find that for this particular business process, this is the methodology and this is the model, that's the most cost effective and the best model, for that particular problem. So that's sort of how we're thinking of ourselves. We think of ourselves as an applied AI company. We make, AI, easy for you in the enterprise.
And what do you see in the economics of that AI trend? Do you feel that you can easily deliver the value based on that underlying infrastructure cost? Is that gap increasing, decreasing? What's happening?
Yeah. So I think AI technology is very expensive for sure. But I think in enterprise, a lot of use cases are where the cost is actually not at all a concern. The value that you get from AI compared to the cost. So I'll give you some simple examples. Take a customer support ticket. Most of these enterprises today, when they actually have a ticket, they spend maybe $5 to $15 per that's the cost that they have minimum to actually, and this is I'm talking about that's the cost in the
that's with no phone call or anything else, just a ticket.
And that's for the consumer tier 1 type of customer tickets. Once you start to talk about B2B and maybe think about at your company, when there's a customer ticket, you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, on one ticket, right? And if you think about how much does it take for AI to actually solve that case automatically, it may take 10 cents, 25 cents, or $1, right? So there's a large gap
value
between that cost and the value that you get from it. That's one example, and that's in customer support. Same for engineering. One of the very common use cases for AI is AI can review new code submissions, that your engineers are making. Engineers, you're lucky if you can spend 20% of your time writing code. Most of the time, you have to actually do other. You have to be in service of other engineers. You have to review their code. You have to troubleshoot issues. And so code reviews is a big tax, especially on your best engineers, the most senior engineers, because they're the ones who have that responsibility. And I've seen this, as a reviewer myself, it's very frustrating when I have a young person who's still learning how to code. They submit, a piece of code, and there's so many errors, issues in it. And I get exhausted, by just giving them all that feedback, to the degree that, now I'm actually telling them basics and not even going to the higher level of, qualitative feedback because I lose energy. How much time am I going to spend, reviewing somebody's code? And so that's a big one for AI. I think the cost of reviewing a PR is $100 at least, and then, AI can actually take care of 80% of that for you. Get the basic, making sure the code is high quality, there are no bugs, there is, following your style guides. And so I think the value gap is pretty solid for many of these use cases. in the enterprise. When it comes to like helping your employees with AI, we're not seeing any use case where the cost is becoming a consideration.
Yeah, it's not like the ad serving where you're trying to generate microcents on or cents on a microcent investment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious about two takes. One is, as Rob and I have a challenge that we've been embarking on, which is within 5 seconds, anybody who has to find enterprise planning data, they should be able to find it within the company, right? 5 to find is our mantra for it. As one of those people who is trying to enable that function through the digitization and platform maintenance within the company, how should I think about my integration point with a product like Glean, right? Should I be running a little ahead? In the past, people used to develop custom applications before RDBMS was possible, and they would still store data. But then when RDBMS came, or Relational Database Management Systems came, it made it faster. So should I be thinking about things of that nature where we run a little ahead in terms of, custom platform and then be ready for the integration point? Or should we be thinking of this paradigm a little different? That's one of my questions. The other part that I also want to maybe comment a little bit around is this coaching by AI is a huge theme that a lot of people are reporting positive experiences around. There was actually a recent study where there was a contrarian opinion that the AI would present to individuals. And having somebody who is not judgmental, right? Or having this anthropomorphized machine which is not judgmental, being patient with you, letting you sort of, question things slowly around, actually helps people change their opinion faster than if doing that feedback with the senior dev, right? At some point in time, I'm going to be like, yeah, the senior dev is, annoying. But if I'm sitting with an AI, I tend to be a little bit more relaxed. So those are two things I'm curious to see what your take is on.
Yeah. So first, in terms of what's the best way to actually use the Glean platform and, add value to your employees. I think the approach that we have seen that's most successful is basically deploy a product like Glean, which brings all of it company information together in one place, and actually connect it with with all of your data systems, quickly all at once. Because and then when you sort of go in with that wholesale approach of look, now I have this one place where I can go and ask questions, and if I don't get answers, that means the answer doesn't exist in the company. You got to a real good search product only works where it can offer that level of guarantee. Today, if you don't find things on Google, you sort of assume that okay,
sure
that is not there, right? And that's what you have to make happen in the enterprise too, right? That's the kind of confidence you have to generate in people. And then in terms of how to actually have true impact of it, that 5 to find that you mentioned, it's not sufficient to bring a new product to people. You also have to sort of get embedded in their workflows, where they spend time every day. The AI assistance has to come to you, where you are, right? That's when it's going to actually be most effective for you. And then quickly coming back to the second question, I have this analogy to share with you. Think about Roger Federer. He's a great tennis player, right? When he goes and plays a match, he has a big team of people around him, that actually is helping him in different ways. There are low-level help, that's, somebody who's stringing his rackets, to, preparing his shoes, to, his, hitting partners, that he practices with and gets, and gets warmed up. And then there's a coach, that's looking at observing his strokes, and telling him what he needs to change in them, or the mental strategies to sort of fight the opponent that that is about to go and fight. And that's there's a team, and that sort of makes him so much more capable and makes him better. But he has it because he's special, right? Of course, he's a I'm also I want to be a tennis player. I got none of that. So I know so I don't get to improve the same way my game or my skill. But now if you think about in the future world of AI and work, I believe that all of us will have an amazing team of personal say personal AI team that I'm going to have as an employee. And it doesn't matter whether I'm a CEO or whether I'm a software engineer or a customer service agent, every single person in the company is going to have, that amazing team of people around them. And, this team is actually, doing a few different things for me. Like the level of help that I get from it is everything from assistance, to coaching, as you mentioned. Bulk of my work is actually done by, this team. I don't have to do that anymore myself. Like we believe that 90% of our work is going to be taken away from us, and our AI team is going to be doing it for us. So it's going to make us a 10xer, in the future. But the help actually, spans all the way to like coaching and actually helping you become better. And it happens in the confines in a safe environment, which is what actually is the best thing, which you mentioned, Adarsh, is the most amazing part of it. Like imagine a salesperson, finishes a sales call, instead of having his sales, his manager, give him that feedback, which he sort of both gets nervous about and fights back. You get that feedback, in the safe private environment, and you get better with it. You receive that feedback better. So that's the new world that we're heading towards, and I think it's really bright for us.
Think about other use cases moving forward, and maybe the roadmap items, or maybe they're not on the Glean roadmap. But a lot of these tools are designed for single user environments. Like a single user to get access to all the data. Of course, most of us are actually very collaborative. We're working on problems together. We're trying to solve problems together. Maybe we're having an argument and we're trying to get a common fact base. How do you sort of see the evolution of collaboration
in AI?
In AI?
Yeah. So you're starting to see some of that already. If you look at some of the consumer AI tools, they've built features like, Canvas, which allows you to sort of take, the work of AI and then start to collaborate on it, with your teammates, where we're no longer just me. Imagine that, I'm trying to actually publish a research report on a topic. So I start working on it myself first. I ask AI to do a bunch of things and create some artifact. But it's not enough. The work is not done. And at that point, I invite my colleagues, and then we are now working in this surface, and we're actually getting AI to sort of add more and more things into it. So collaboration is absolutely going to be part of it. So and that's very basic right now. But that's sort of how I also feel is our teams are going to be like that. You can imagine that if you have you're working on a specific feature, you have a team of 5 people, but you can actually also have a few AI team members,
right.
And sort of all work together in it. And I think that these things are going to become pretty commonplace.
What else do you have in your long-term vision for the Glean roadmap?
Yeah. Well, I mean, from a Glean roadmap perspective, so first, I was describing this concept of a personal AI team, that every employee gets to have, that actually helps them not with most of their work, but also helps them become better, and and I think so that's sort of one that's one of our core goals, is to actually build that the personal AI team for every individual. So we are very much about how we can help employees with AI. If you think and then so that's sort of from our product side, that's we want to be the best enterprise personal AI assistant, the personal AI team for every employee. But the way we build that that AI assistant that's personal to every individual is we still have to go and learn a lot about this individual. We also have to learn about the company that they work in, all the information, all the data, the different relationships between people. Unless if you understand the enterprise deeply, you won't be able to help an individual in that environment, right? So Glean will is we also think of ourselves as that horizontal AI platform for the enterprise. One system that sort of has knowledge of all the different systems inside your company, all the information within them, and this system actually not only can sort of help you, use that information and do some, and make AI work on it, but it also actually helps you take actions within those systems. And this platform, is something that we believe, becomes very powerful, and it allows people to actually also create more functional applications. We also have like a lot of like, SaaS products now, third-party applications that are writing into Glean. They're actually using our API to make AI within their own products better. So that's sort of like some of the cool things that are happening with us. Like, we are like getting established as that horizontal AI data stack inside your company.
Now, Adarsh, before we wrap, do you have other questions on your list?
Yeah, this has actually been a very educative session. The one thing I was also kind of wondering is how much of that integration that you spoke about, where Glean becomes a layer, is leveraging core functionality such as semantic search and whatnot versus leveraging prompt engineering, right? Like, because that's also like meta prompting, where if Glean knows enough about other parts of the ecosystem, it can do a better job at prompting than a custom, built stack, right? Like, so I'm wondering how much of that do you see happen in the future?
Yeah. I think so. Overall, there is a big advantage in having a horizontal AI platform that has full enterprise context. Because if you think about any piece of work that happens inside the company, it actually typically happens across multiple different systems. Think about a new feature that you're going to build, for your customers. It starts with, those requests coming in your customer service platform, then somebody promoting that into a feature request in Jira for your R&D team. Then some design discussions happens over Teams or Slack. Then somebody writes a document. Then after that, somebody's going to write some code. It's like the whole journey of how that feature was built, why it was built. The full context can only be had if you sort of look across all of these systems. So there's a lot of power, when it comes to if you have connected to all the different systems, you can actually do things which are a lot more smarter, a lot more complete. Like it's just like humans. A human is more powerful when they actually have seen a lot, right? And so that's the power of Glean. And I think it's both the fact that we have all that knowledge and from all the different systems, and we know the interactions that are happening between different systems. That's very powerful. But then you raise a very good point around prompts, because ultimately you have to actually, to make AI deliver the best, for you also have to figure out how to use it. It's not easy. And I think that additional context, and what we are learning from is that, once you deploy Glean inside the company, the best people in your company figure out, or not I said it wrong. There are certain people who are, AI enthusiasts.
Right.
And they're going to actually figure out amazing things to do with AI. And when they do that, our job in Glean is to actually make sure that we learn from them, and we also make sure that they share those learnings with the others. And as we sort of start to learn, ultimately the system becomes more and more agentic, and actually your end users don't need to actually be creative anymore, with how to prompt, because this becomes part of the overall underlying system.
Yeah, the notion of just and the way I've started to use these tools is just a prolific, verbose description of what I need, and then the tool can sort it out. I don't have to think about this going in.
Yeah.
In fact, I think there's obviously all this crazy talk about AGI and so on, but it seems like there's something between where we are now, which is this sort of knowledge curation, to AGI, and it's almost we're all getting older here around the table, and I think some of the things you realize is that your rate of knowledge accumulation and your rate of wisdom accumulation, happen on these very different time scales. So maybe there's some AI wisdom that happens really from the mass of all this learning and knowledge and connectedness.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Arvind, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really, really looking forward to checking in and seeing how Glean continues to evolve and the journey you guys are on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, like, share, and subscribe. And we're always looking forward to hearing your feedback. And be on the lookout for the next episode of Silicon Economics.